Welcome to the Youth Knowledge Forum 2022, the kickoff to our virtual sessions. Guys, we're really excited. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us today. And a huge thank you to our incredible speakers. We've also got another 3 sessions happening today, as well as 4 sessions happening tomorrow. This is all in collaboration with the NBRF, as well as the Mohammed bin Rashid Maktoum Knowledge Foundation. My name's Tuesday Le Roux. I'll be the moderator for today's session, and we'll be talking about unlocking business opportunities in the virtual world. Now, we know this is a very big, broad topic of conversation. So we're going to do our best to break it down, to not make it too analytical with big words, but really just speak about what is actually happening, why is it important, why is it interesting, and how is it going to be affecting everything moving forward. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop it in the Q&A box, and I will do my absolute best to, if we're speaking about that topic, to pitch your questions to our incredible speakers. If it's not in line with the topic we're speaking about at the moment, later on in the talk, I will definitely bring it up and try and get through as many questions as we can. Now, I'd just like to welcome our incredible speakers. We have Maha, the Executive Vice President for Strategy and Communication for Bedu. She's led communications for some of the world's leading Web3 and NFT projects, including VFriends and VCon. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and really grateful for this audience.
Amazing. We're super excited to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be here with us. We have Najib. He's an experienced technologist and Web3 builder, currently building OasisX, the MENA's digital foundation serving Web3 and NFT space. Welcome, Najib.
Hello, hello. Thanks for having us. Very happy and proud to be sharing the stage and this panel with Maha and Dr. Tariq. And thank you very much, Tuesday, for hosting us.
Thank you. I'm super excited. You'll be actually kicking us off in a little bit, and I've had a sneak peek of your presentation. So I'm really excited to hear everything that you have to say. Now, last but not least, Dr. Tariq Binhendi. You're the senior partner at Global Ventures and chairman of ENBD, and Edelman Middle East. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a while since I've done such a big, or been involved in such a big forum, and excited about the topic, and my fellow speakers are very impressive. So thank you, Tuesday.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to be here to share your knowledge, because the one thing that I absolutely have grown to love about this space is the amount of sharing and the amount of knowledge that people are just so happy to give out, and to really just keep this community growing and going from strength to strength with all the shared knowledge that they're providing. And I know today is going to be exactly that. Now, we're speaking about unlocking business opportunities in the virtual world, and kicking off with, can I be a little bit silly and say the building block, one of the building blocks of this space, which is blockchain technology, and how it's actually revolutionizing the industry. And this is where I pass it over to you, Najib.
All right. I'm going to share my screen first. Just give me a moment, please. Looking good from your side, Tuesday. Can you see my screen?
Looks amazing. I can see everything.
All right. So as you mentioned, we start with the building blocks and the blockchain. And I'm going to give out the technical jargon here. So everybody, please be patient with me and stay focused. We have less than 10 minutes to discuss a couple of what's the blockchain, the metaverse, the virtual world, tokenization, and so on and so forth. So to kick things off, we're not going to start with the blockchain, actually. We're going to start by defining what is a virtual world or what is a metaverse. And the conversation will lead us naturally to the blockchain. So The first instance where the blockchain or where the metaverse was mentioned was in 1992, actually, in a cyberpunk novel called Snow Crash, written by Neil Stephenson. A very interesting read. Really recommend anyone that's interested in the topic to go through it. And the novel, Stevenson describes the metaverse, and I quote, as an imaginary realm that is made available to the public across the worldwide fiber optics network and projected onto virtual reality goggles. Now, this is in 1992, so Stevenson was definitely onto something then. If we look at how the internet, how fiber optics and VR goggles play a key role in virtual worlds today. Another quote I'd like to share with you, which really stuck with me, and I'd like you to keep thinking about this as the session progresses, is that the metaverse is the moment in time where our digital life is worth more to us than our physical life. I think this is very powerful and strong, and I would like you to keep thinking about it the more information is provided to you throughout the session. Now, meta in the term means beyond, and verse in the term means universe. So metaverse is beyond the universe, basically. Or what I like to say, it's an extension of the universe, a digital extension of the universe, actually. But the term is still a bit broad. To help you get a sense of how vague and complex it is, you can try this exercise, which is mentally replacing the metaverse in a sentence with cyberspace or with virtual world. And 90% of the time, the meaning won't substantially change. That's because the term doesn't really refer to a specific type of technology, but rather a broad shift in how we humans interact with the technology through the use of virtual reality, augmented reality, IoT, the Internet of Things, and of course the blockchain. And since the term doesn't refer to a specific technology, it's entirely possible that the term itself might change again with time. So you might hear a different naming for the metaverse later on. Now, broadly speaking, when tech companies refer to the metaverse, they include virtual reality, which is characterized by persistent virtual worlds. Persistent is the key word here, that continue to exist even when you're not participating in them. As well as augmented reality, which combines the aspects of physical and digital worlds together. A lot speak about envisioning some sort of new digital economy in the metaverse that will create tangible financial revenue for its participants. So these are a couple of characteristics that we speak about when we talk about virtual worlds or the metaverse. Now, some might say, World of Warcraft or Fortnite, like these are two of the most played games in the last 30 years of existence. And they include virtual experiences, they have concerts, they have exhibitions inside of them. You spend a chunk of time inside these games, socializing, buying in-game items, learning, talking to people, playing games. You can even like strap on an Oculus headset and be fully immersed in the game. But is that really what the metaverse is? Or is it just some kind of sophisticated gaming system? For me, the short answer is no, as this does not encompass the entire scope of the metaverse as we envision it. So here we go to what are the core attributes of the ideal metaverse or the ideal virtual world. The first thing is that it should happen in real time. The metaverse will be a living experience that exists continuously for everyone and in real time, just as real life. As we said before, it's an extension to the real life. Number two, it should always be available or persistent. It never resets, it never pauses, it never ends. It just keeps going endlessly. Number three, which is of utmost importance, is that it creates value in real life. So it has a fully functioning economy. Individuals and businesses should be able to create, own, invest, sell, and be compensated for a vast array of efforts that produce value that is recognizable in the real world and not just in the digital world. And number four, of course, is that inside the digital world or the virtual world or the metaverse, you own your identity and you own your assets. They're not just stored on some servers that are owned by social media companies or other gaming companies per se. So these are our core attributes of what constitutes basically a metaverse. Now we can get to the blockchain because we haven't mentioned it before. And basically, I just wanted to wait until this slide because to explain why the blockchain is important. And it is important because it's the current system that encompasses all the traits that we discussed in the previous slide. The blockchain by itself, it's not a device, it's not a machine, it's not a cryptocurrency. It is a system to keep track of information. And what we name this a ledger. This system to keep track of information, or the ledger, is distributed across many nodes and geographic locations. So here we start with the first characteristic, which is it's decentralized and not controlled by a central authority. Number two, which is very important, it is transparent, where everyone can see all the transactions that are happening. And it provides the highest level of security through cryptography and encryption. So this is to show the importance of the blockchain and how it could help build the metaverse. So to build an efficient metaverse that is persistent, available, that supports a good economy, and has proper data ownership for its participants, you should definitely leverage the blockchain as part of your infrastructure. And it won't be the only thing that we will leverage. Blockchain will be combined with cloud computing for better graphics, for better performance. It will be combined with virtual reality, augmented reality, immersive experiences, and other technologies, of course. Now, the possibilities offered by the metaverse really are endless. They range from attending virtual concerts. I'm pretty sure the panelists will tackle these topics in more depth, but the possibilities offered by the metaverse range from attending virtual concerts to traveling, to shopping, to making transactions, going to the movies, trying on different clothes, changing the way we work, we do meetings, e-learning, and so on. So to activate all these services, just like in real life, we need money and we need wallets to store this money. And here comes the importance of tokenization and digital wallets. So I won't really dive into the technicalities of things, but a token is a representation of a particular asset or a particular utility. Within the context of blockchain technology, tokenization is the process of converting something of value into a digital token that's usable on the blockchain and on any blockchain application. So in our case, it is the metaverse, obviously. And the assets tokenized on the blockchain can come in two forms. They can represent tangible assets like gold, like real estate, like art, music, and so on and so forth, or they can represent intangible assets like voting rights, ownership rights, content licensing, and so on and so forth. So practically anything can be tokenized if it is considered an asset that can be owned and has value to someone. And this can be incorporated, of course, into a larger asset market and a metaverse or a virtual world. So to wrap things up, and we need to talk about the two types of tokens that we use that are available in the metaverse, or the main two tokens that we use in the metaverse that come or that are built on the blockchain. Of course, number one are blockchain-enabled currencies or cryptocurrencies, which will empower the financial system that we discussed. They facilitate physical and digital transactions without any frictions or fluctuation in exchange rates, no high fees, no intermediaries, and no central authorities. So crypto will power up the metaverse economy ultimately. While when it comes to unique, verifiable digital assets and non-fungible tokens or NFTs, they are critical as to create, to store, verify, and exchange identity details, assets and digital assets, and any other component that should not be controlled by an external entity. Any component that should only be owned by the user itself. So these digital assets could be your digital avatar, your clothing, your digital artwork, your in-game items, your songs, your concert passes, and so on and so forth. And with this, I would have wrapped up, hopefully, the part of the what is the metaverse, the virtual world, the blockchain, and tokenization. And I will leave the rest for the esteemed panelists. And please do share your questions with us in the chat if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Najib. That was absolutely amazing. I loved it. I knew I was excited to hear from you, but you exceeded. You exceeded. But yes, guys, like Najib said, if you have any questions, please feel free and open to put them into the Q&A box, and we will try and answer all of our questions. But I'm going to pass it over to you, Maha, if you'd like to add anything to what Najib just said or take the conversation further.
Yeah, I mean, just this listening to that is just a really good overview of where is the state of the union? What is the blockchain? What is the history of the metaverse? And what could we really do with the tokens and how it's going to go forward? So just from my experience, I help brands and businesses enter the Web3 space, tell their stories in the Web3 space, but really understand why should we care about it? So a lot of people are like, why should we care about NFTs? Why should we care about blockchain? Why should we care about the metaverse? And it starts with thinking about the underlying issue that Najib brought up, and that is the technology. When the internet was introduced, we were calling Web 1.0, the internet was basically just a search engine. When Web 2 came along, we learned that the internet was much more than just search engines. It was apps, it was e-commerce, and then social media changed the game on everything, and everyone had access to economies around the world because the internet allowed everyone to have access. Web3 is the blockchain technology. It's that big of a sea change shift for what's going to happen for business, for the way that we live, for the way that we communicate, even for the way we do transactions. So, for example, a lot of people heard about blockchain technology when NFTs came onto the scene, and they thought, oh, NFTs are just JPEGs or NFTs are just art. Well, what we discovered is because of how blockchain works, it's so much more. It can give you access. It can give you utility. So access could be access to attend an event. Utility could be part of a loyalty program. We all saw Starbucks and Delta Airlines announced a loyalty program where if you owned both, you could get something for that. So people are thinking about how to give benefits and loyalty programs to brands. So I really think that one of the things that we'll get to see that the blockchain is going to enable and unlock entertainment, retail, fashion, trade. We're going to buy our houses, and our legal contracts are going to be verified on the blockchain. When you go to buy a luxury good or a Rolex watch, it'll be verified on blockchain. And so we're going to see the ways that blockchain technology is really going to have an impact on consumers, on our lifestyles, and how we communicate with each other.
I love that. And when, like you said, people just thought it was one thing. It was, pictures or JPEGs of like little drawn images, and it's actually so much more. And
yeah,
when I meet people who are first entering the space, they kind of feel like, oh, well, I'm not interested in art, so therefore I can't be part of the space, but I can see there's something happening. And I always tell them, it's like the internet, like when the internet came, like now everybody is involved. And just because right now is not where your focus is, it's going to be opening up to so much more, and everybody's going to find their place.
Early adoption usually comes from consumer brands. So you see the Nike, the Dolce & Gabbana, Tiffany, Gucci, Adidas, Time Magazine, Budweiser, all these brands that were coming in to actually try to get into the space. So you see brands leading first, and that's the first indication. Are brands coming up with Web3 strategies to leverage consumers already spending time there? Are consumers already gaming? Is it consumers already focused on how to leverage that? That's the first thing you look at. The second thing you look at is, are the tech giants investing in this, the significant new audience that come in from Web 3 to this, what we're calling Web 2.5. So you see companies like Shopify introducing an NFT gated for Shopify store owners, Salesforce, Google Cloud, Instagram now is allowing digital collectible sales through Polygon blockchain on its US app. Reddit now is having avatars. So you see the main big tech companies driving that mass adoption and mass reach. The third other thing I want to just bring up is talking about crypto. So a lot of people know about ETH and they know about some of the other coins and currencies that are out there. But if you look at some of the banks and some of the brands, what are they doing to adapt and accept crypto across industries? So Visa, MasterCard, other companies that are coming in from consumer and retail. Gucci now accepts payment via crypto. Twitch accepts via crypto. Microsoft accepts via crypto. Tesla, Emirates now also does it through crypto. Delta Airlines, BMW. So think about, why are these big brands now using crypto payments as going as a mainstream? And then last thing, and I'll stop talking, and it's about token gated events. How you can create a new experience for the brand. How can you create a new model for token ticketing to happen? So people may have heard of Coachella or Universal Studios that gives visitors, park goers, an opportunity to do a scavenger hunt if they have that certain ticket. Think about all the experiences in Abu Dhabi or Dubai that take place where you go to an event. What if you wanted to get a collectible of the ticket of that event to show that you've been to all the F1 races or how many concerts you've been to? People communicate through brands, what they wear, what they own in their wallet. And so everyone's going to start to see the visual side of how we can see what people have in their wallet as a way of expressing themselves, like they do by the sneakers they're wearing or the hoodie that they have on.
That's awesome. And I feel like when these big brands or big names decide to go into it, that's when people can build trust. And then it's not just your friend saying, oh, you should ape into this, or this is really cool. It's going to be leading, the big brands are leading the way. And I've heard that, at some point, everybody's going to be a part of either tokenization or the Web3 metaverse world without even knowing it, just because normal everyday activities will be translated to that space.
100%.
Well, on that note, Dr. Tariq, I'd love to hand the mic over to you if you'd like to add anything to what our previous speakers have said or move the conversation forward.
I honestly feel like I should have started because it's really hard to follow both Najib and Maha, but thanks for the opportunity. So I'll build on what Maha has been saying, and with a bit of the kind of infrastructure layout that Najib has highlighted. I think there are two key things that we need to focus on here. One is the incumbents and the infrastructure that are going to allow for the advancement of Web 3.0, of artificial intelligence's involvement in that expansion, and then as well as what we're doing with the metaverse, right? So that's one component. The other component here is a generational component. And, I've heard this from a few different people that are in the space, right? Is that essentially everybody born in the 80s and early 90s is the last generation of people that are trying to bring new tech into old ways of doing business, right? So we're kind of the gatekeepers as it relates to how this is going for the adoption rate to increase and improve. And I think this is an important component because when I sit in various gatherings and I talk to people, the older generation are like, you know what, we're just going to buy real estate. It's what we're familiar with. That's where the opportunity sits, and everybody's always going to need somewhere to live. And the newer generation is like, I never want to own anything, right? I just want to be able to drift and float wherever I go. Now, how you bridge those two gaps is going to be important. And I think this is where the role of the incumbents and the infrastructure, and by incumbents, I'm talking about companies as well as policymakers, right? Where they have a key role to play in terms of the dissemination of this, but the adoption of this technology in day-to-day life. Now, what do I mean by that? Web 3.0, the metaverse, artificial intelligence, all of this is about giving back ownership to the users. The current model for most institutions, I mean, Maha highlighted very clearly, Nike, a lot of these different brands, is one of their core drivers is hoarding as much data as they can on each user so that they can benefit from that. Now, Web 3.0 is a completely different way of approaching business in that now the user gets to control what data they allow access to, but then also how do you monetize your personal data in a way that allows for privacy, but also profitability. And I'm going to get to the point shortly. I'm just trying to put a framework around this, right? Because you have this situation today where you're merging the physical and digital world, and how do you create the right ecosystem and infrastructure for people to get involved, whether they're very familiar or not familiar at all. And this is where the incumbents come into play, especially telcos, right? Telcos, I think, are going to play a key role in terms of rolling out 5G, maybe even 6G with the way that we're going, the way that, you know, access to data is going to be provided, the speeds that are required for this technology to actually take off. All telcos are going to become technology companies. And so what does that mean to some of the folks that are on this call, right? Who may be in university now or just starting their careers or maybe 20 years into a career, right? If you can support the incumbent's ability to implement these various components to the infrastructure that they've built, you're going to really help them be able to develop and expand beyond where they currently are. And I have example after example. You look at the gamification of healthcare. You look at how it is that currencies are exchanged today, right? The role that telcos play. Today, you don't need a bank anymore if you're in certain countries because you can do everything through your telco. Now, what does that mean for the banks, for the incumbents? How do they play a part? How do they connect with the consumer? And this is where I think the new generation of folks that are coming in, that are looking to build out these businesses, that are looking to own their data, can play a big role in helping those incumbents develop things. And I've seen it. Major institutions launch massive initiatives to try to adopt the blockchain technology, and no one internally actually understands what blockchain technology is. So they're trying to build an infrastructure that they don't fully understand. Whereas,
well, I'm just gonna pause you for
go
one
ahead,
second.
Tuesday.
One of the questions we actually got asked was, in layman's terms, can you just tell us what the blockchain is?
So the easiest way to explain blockchain, and I'm coming from a finance background here, is that it's an improved checks and balances process, right? The current model today with how transactions are conducted, irrespective of what type of transaction, is based on trust, right? And human trust. What blockchain allows you to do is take that human trust that we've developed over centuries and apply it from a technological standpoint where there is no interference whatsoever from users, because there are multiple devices, multiple computers, if you want to refer to it as that, that are verifying information on any single transaction that is conducted. Now, I don't know if that answer made Najib grimace in pain or actually he would support, but that's the way that I explain it when I talk to people, because it's very hard to comprehend. People talk about blockchain all the time, and nobody talks about the utility side of blockchain enough so that people become aware of what it does, right? Najib, was that a good enough explanation?
Yeah, I do agree with you. Actually, like I'll add to that an analogy I read the other day called the glass box analogy, like how to understand what the blockchain is. And it's imagine a big room full of glass boxes where people deposit their money, but only the owners can open their own box, but everybody can see what each box contains, and everybody can follow up on what each box contains. So this brings you to the aspect of transparency and the blockchain. And then what you mentioned makes complete sense, of course, like the decentralized aspects and sharing the ledger across all the participants and so on and so forth.
And you know, I mean, look, thanks, Najib. I think the reality, Tuesday, and to everyone on this call, is that we already live our lives on one, maybe two, at most 3 devices that are different, right? That's the phone that you carry, which is no longer really a phone. It's the wearable in terms of what you want to understand about your body and the behavior of how it is that you are functioning as a person. and what it is that you're going to put across your face in terms of the visual side of things, right? The AR, VR side of things. And so the link between those three devices is becoming more and more controlled by the user. You don't have to share the information that you're gaining from your wearable to anyone else. You don't have to say who you are when you make a transaction anymore. You can anonymize all of that through very simple, infrastructure that's been built and developed already. So I think today, if you look at those three things, and if people are looking for how it is that they can get involved, one, the opportunity lies in helping major incumbents be able to access and build on the infrastructure that they already have or the market share that they have to participate in this area. Otherwise, they will be left behind at some point, and that creates different issues. So that's one key opportunity from a general point of view. The second key opportunity here is taking each sector, right? Healthcare, for example, the gamification of surgery. I've recently been involved with a company today that completely removes the need for the physical side of surgery and trains surgeons purely on a gamified mechanism of getting them up to speed with how it is that you would operate on a patient. And it's a small startup. They started here in the UAE, and now they're conducting 20,000 plus surgeries a year, all gamification, training surgeons that way. And not surgeries here, surgeries in the US, surgeries in major markets. So there are solutions that I believe, especially when you consider that our infrastructure here in the region is actually quite new relative to other regions. And Africa is now following in terms of the leap from, railroad to actually everything being on a phone. And I think we have a lot of opportunity to create technology in different sectors, feed them into major incumbents, and help us get that metaverse up and running, and the way that we will engage using AI, the metaverse as a domain and as a place that we may live in some form, right? And still control what it is that we provide to everyone. So I'll stop there and open the floor up to questions, or maybe fellow panelists if they have anything to say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tariq. Maha, would you like to add anything onto what Dr. Tariq said, or Najib?
No, I mean, I just think the point that he made about utility is going to be key, because if you can scale the concept of utility to all the different industries, I think that's what's going to be the interesting part about blockchain, that everyone's going to be able to touch it. Because not everyone will be able to buy a cryptocurrency and buy an NFT, but they will be able to go to their grocery store and through the blockchain get a loyalty program for the utility of how many times they visit it. Or if they purchase a car, their warranty would be on the blockchain, and that'll be one of the utilities of how that works. So that's the mainstream stuff that everyone will be able to adopt and to be a part of. And I just felt like it's this definition on the blockchain. It's just basically a public ledger. It's a public record that everyone can see, and it verifies the authenticity and the reality of that object and that IP. And for the first time, we can own IP. Like, it usually somebody owns that brand, like somebody owns everything on the internet. You don't own it. Like with blockchain, you're able to have that ownership. And that's a really big difference. And that's why it's going to be a game changer for everything that we do. That's all.
I agree, Maha. If I can add something to that, if you look at, why do you think Facebook is trying to really get involved in the metaverse, right? That's because they cannot control what information is provided to them. You can go and create a completely fake identity on Facebook and conduct yourself in a manner for years where, a grown man can act like, a young woman if he wanted to, right? There's no verification of that data, right? The blockchain eliminates that completely. And as you look at how it is that we're moving into a more centralized way of doing things, right? And so blockchain is the decentralization of that data ownership and the verification. But the centralization, what I mean by that is how you own your universe, right? This is what we're moving to. It presents a lot of different complications for different policymakers and technology owners, because today if I want to transact anywhere, there's some level of transparency that comes into that play. But if you're doing everything in the digital domain and you don't have the right way of verifying things, you don't have the right way of conducting yourself, it's going to become very challenging for this as an infrastructure to really take off. And so I don't think anyone really has a definition today about what Web 3.0 is going to look like, what it's ultimately going to materialize as, or the metaverse for that matter. But there are major applications today that can already be implemented that large companies are struggling with, and they need support of the youth, right? And I mean this genuinely, they need support of the youth, whether it be an idea that can be presented or a business that can help them really kind of move in a different direction. And I'm seeing it happening. I'm seeing it happening already across multiple industries. You know, Maha highlighted all these fantastic brands that we're very aware of, but all the stuff on the back end, your electricity provider, right? Your telephone company, your car manufacturer, all of these things that we take for granted, where today they're producing parts in a factory through 3D printing because the car is talking to the garage saying, I need this part to be replaced because of the AI on the engine. Now, how do I take that and then allow myself to communicate with my car is the bridge that's missing right now. And so this is going to be a very interesting transition for how it is that we engage with people. And that's my one worry, right? Is how do we continue to engage in a functional society with other people when everyone's constantly looking down at their phone, right? And so this is only going to get worse as we adopt or move into the metaverse. And how we bring that back is going to be an interesting process, I think, sociologically.
I think also too, it'll be a race to the mobile metaverse. Like, you know, not a lot of people are spending time on these headsets. Like how many, you know, gamers might be, but you know, you wear it for more than 20 minutes, you get dizzy, right? So they're going to have to find a way to adopt it into a device that people use, and that's the mobile. So I think that's going to be another, you know, that's why I think metaverse is super early, just because it's not in a stage where people can engage and interact. And I think Mark Zuckerberg and Meta were like, when they started social media, the phone had already existed. And now he's trying to create a device in which other apps and platforms will now be built. And I think the technology will evolve. It's very early days, but I think that's another big indicator of how is it going to be adopted and unlocking business opportunities in the virtual world. It has to be something that consumers can use, and they don't have to have the barrier of a $500, $1,000 headset and wearing that for a very long time.
Now, on that point of adoption in different areas that they can be adopted in, we've got our first question in, and it says, in terms of application, will we be able to use artificial intelligence and the metaverse in ways that are beneficial to students and education?
100%.
Definitely.
100%. I mean, think of the education implications. We all saw during the pandemic how terrible the Zoom experience is. It's not an immersive education experience. So artificial intelligence and AI will allow you to sit next to a professor sitting in another country or another city, but in more immersive experience, as if it's real as in gaming. So it'll revolutionize education, surgeries. You can have an expert or a doctor if you're in Africa and you don't have access to that specialist, and you can let them be virtually present in the operating room through AI. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, the breakthroughs of the technology of simulating crashes and understanding how to prevent them. I mean, it's enormous. And especially, I think the biggest disruptor will be education.
Yeah, I agree, Maha. I think as long as the infrastructure can adjust and accommodate for latency issues, that's where you're going to see massive changes. I'll give you an example on education specifically, right? Knowledge today has been disseminated. This is the whole point of the decentralization of knowledge, right? Is that major universities, a lot of the top schools in the world are providing all of their classes online for free now, right? Or the content of those classes. And this is the point that I was making about the bridge between the physical world and what we can learn online without ever engaging with people, is how do you merge those two things together? The whole point of going and doing an MBA at a top school is the social experience that you have with your classmates, right? The knowledge, to a certain extent, is secondary, but because you will learn it, you're there to learn. But it's how do you build that social network and framework that you're trying to develop and expand? And I think this is something that's going to be absolutely critical, particularly in education. More and more people are moving to homeschooling. You have to be able to validate the knowledge that you are disseminating to your children or children that are being taught. And the blockchain can help there, AI can help there, and the way of learning can help, which is where the metaverse comes in. But it all comes down to latency, and it's going to come down to that balance between physical and digital, because social skills, frankly, are on the decline. And I think that this is where it's incumbent that we adopt technology, but that we also remember that we grew out of villages, right? And I think that people need to continue to develop those community skills so that we maintain what has been built. And I mean that very passionately, because you do see a lot of people in their own world, right? Too often. And I think people need to come back to building things together.
Well, talking about being in, sorry, Najib.
Sorry, yeah, just because Dr. Tariq tapped on an interesting point, which is like the community skills and the human factor in this. And and the question is really interesting because it taps on AI and education. Because right now in the metaverse, you can experience education, but like I've attended a couple of classes, and 10 minutes in, you're talking to straight faces that are 2D, that are not engaged, that don't have any emotion. And you're going to get, the classroom is going to become weird at some point. So we're not in that phase yet. But the introduction of AI would really add this, some emotions to this classroom and to the attendees that are participating in it. And this would bring it to the next level, but then we have a lot of technology to catch up to, and not everybody has access to this infrastructure, so it's still in a shaky phase. We're not there yet.
Najib, you know, I actually attended a meeting a few weeks ago where it was a global meeting, right? There were about a dozen or so people. Every one of us had different Oculus glasses on or headsets on. And we were sitting around a table, and everyone was seated at the table as though you were sitting in that meeting room, right? You could be anywhere that you want to be. Now, what was really interesting about it, the AI in the headset, was that if you started talking about something, the AI would pull that up as where it is in your presentation, and the presentation would come up and be broadcast to the people sitting at that table. So there was no one screen up in the background that everybody had to look to. It just came up and you started talking and it fed through. So the AI was being developed to allow for a seamless sit back in your chair with your headset on experience, but where you're able to contribute as though you're sitting around the same table. And I think the only issue there, again, was the latency, right? You have slight bugs at times where you don't have the bandwidth, but more and more we're moving into that where the learning side of things, as well as the work side of things, are moving far beyond today what Teams and Zoom and others are offering. And it's going to be really impressive to see how it is that we engage with each other, where we never have to shake someone's hand physically.
Now, speaking on that, first of all, I just want to say a huge shout out to everybody tuning in on our Twitter space, on the MBRF Twitter space streaming live. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Please feel free to send us your questions as well. But you were speaking about bridging the gap. Our next question that we have that I can pose to any of you is, how can we leverage Web3 in our infrastructure? Especially, how do we bridge the gap between countries?
I think it's quite a broad question, so I'm going to try to address that in terms of bridging the gaps between countries. I think, as we've seen in a lot of different, particularly for us here in the region, we go through, in certain countries, right? There are ebbs and flows as it relates to the physical infrastructure. I'm not talking about places like the UAE, but other places. And young people, whether they're 3 years old or 18 years old, need a way to access knowledge and access information. And at some point, you're not going to be able to stop information getting to people. Now, how can you do that where people have access to information for the right reason, right? To actually educate themselves, right? No one wants to continue seeing young girls not get an education because there's no physical school somewhere. They have access now, and it's going to be something that I think all of them will have access to, assuming we adjust for the physical infrastructure, where anyone can learn. So this cross-country, cross-geography, cross-political aspect that a lot of people deal with in terms of whether it be donations, whether it be the way that you build refugee camps. And I'm talking about the most extreme situation here because everything else tends to be a little bit easier. We should, and we will be in the next, I believe, 5 years, be able to provide anyone, irrespective of the circumstances, access to an education. And that for me is the foundation for people getting exposure to everything that's out there and being able to cling on to something. And I'm going to be very cliche here, but hope sometimes, and I use that word very strongly here, hope is not something that is disseminated as widely as it should be, whether you're in the US or you're in other places. A lot of people coming out of school and college, they don't know where they're going, don't know what they're doing, have been, exposed to so many different things without a lot of direction. And I think without hope and without opportunity, it becomes really challenging, irrespective of technology. But we have to give them the baseline. And the cross-geography, cross-border, what people are doing in the UAE or in the Kingdom or in Jordan or in other places, and how it is that they're going to expand that into other countries in the region and then globally, is going to become critical to how it is that we create this community. Now, I'll stop there because I get really passionate about the social side of all of this because it is important. Too many kids are still not getting an education. And it's unacceptable when you think about the tools that are available today to give people that exposure. And we need to do better. We all need to do better at fixing that. So I'll stop there because I get pretty passionate about this area. So I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that, but that's fine.
I see you nodding. Would you like to add on?
Can you just go back to the first part of the question, Tuesday?
I thought that might be the question. Where's our question? Here we go. Can we leverage Web3 in our infrastructure, especially bridging the gap between countries? And now in my mind, we were speaking about how African countries were kind of coming up in this as well. And they might be talking about the financial gap, technology gap.
Yeah. So the thing about blockchain, and this is what we say, is it democratizes technology and democratizes services. So we should be leveraging on this infrastructure to make this technology accessible to all and build products and services on top of it that will help advance our communities and our societies. The question is, what are the products and what are these services? And this should be done on a macro level when it comes to each country or each community or each society, and see how we can do that. But the answer is definitely yes.
Awesome. Maha, I've got a question. I'm going to shoot it to you. And the question is, can the Web 3.0 bring opportunities and resources to the fundraising space and thus support sustainable projects and not only commercial ones?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest impacts it can have is on philanthropy for fundraising, right? So you know where the money is going. You can follow the trail. There's so many things happen and people want to donate to a cause, but they don't know where the actual money is going. With blockchain, you'll be able to say, this money is going towards this contribution. This is what it's happening. It's going to bring a level of transparency that the fundraising industry needs. So it'll have a huge impact on how philanthropy works, how donations work, how fundraising works. And that's because the blockchain is a public ledger, a public record that is verified on the chain, on the actual the chain. And so we'll be able to know exactly where the money is going and how it's being funded.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that real quick. Like our company has been live for 2.5 months now. We work in NFTs and Web3, and we've already had 4 projects related to fundraisers a basketball team, a cultural foundation, and 2 NGOs. The future is there. The NGOs and these fundraisers need the transparency. This is something that has been a big problem for a long time, and the blockchain and the transparency in Web3 really solves that. So I can't really stress on how important it is and how much of an important use case this is.
It also allows for mass participation, Najib, and Maha. I think for too long, if you wanted to own a stake in a soccer team, for example, or a football team, you couldn't. But this allows you to do that, right? And allows you to do that at a fraction of the price, assuming it's available. And so I think you get mass participation, you can get a lot of different things accomplished using these platforms. And Kickstarter was a very interesting way to get people to put $1 in, right? If you have 1 million people put $1 each in, that's massive fundraising for a startup. And so I think this is only going to evolve. And as Maha said absolutely correctly, this is all about being able to verify where dollars are going to. And that's a key driver for how we're going to continue to drive initiatives in the region and further afield.
Well, guys, I think that we have come to the end of our first seminar virtual session for the Youth Knowledge Forum 2020. I'm now just going to give you guys just maybe 30 seconds to a minute just to wrap up and just to say your last little message to our audience, and just to everybody who's watching. Guys, thank you so much. Wherever in the world you're tuning in from, whatever metaversal space you're tuning in from, we're just super happy that you could attend and be here. But we'll start off with you, Najib. Thank you so much for your presentation that kicked off our space.
Thank you very much, Tuesday, for taking us through this panel, and for the invitation for the attendees as well. This is an absolute pleasure and honor for me as well to be sharing the panel with Maha and Dr. Tariq. So this all in all was a very, very pleasant experience for me, and hopefully next year we do it again, or maybe in the metaverse, who knows?
Oh, excited to see where 2023 takes us. Maha, over to you.
I just would say, if you are curious about blockchain, virtual worlds, metaverse, NFTs, start learning, start educating yourselves, get on Twitter, follow a lot of people on Twitter, start listening to podcasts. It's an education game at this point. We're all learning. Nobody's an expert. If anyone says that they're an expert, they're not. So everyone's learning. So take time to seek knowledge, to follow people that you trust in terms of information. And really, if there's anything I can do or any questions I have, I'm sure you guys can follow me on social media and hit me up with a question. Thank you to the Mohammed bin Rashid Foundation for this event.
Thank you so much, Maha. We've absolutely loved having you here, and thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge with us. Dr. Tariq.
Yeah, look, it's been a privilege talking to everyone and sharing, I suppose, the floor with Maha and Najib and yourself, Tuesday. I think what I will say is that it's still so nascent. We're still figuring this all out. So there are no wrong or bad ideas as it relates to how to keep this growing. So participate, like Maha said, get engaged, get involved, talk to people, throw out ideas, right? No one can steal anything anymore, right? If you throw out an idea, it will come back to you. It will be traced back to you as your idea. And so I think stay engaged, stay involved, keep educating yourselves, and ask questions whenever you need to ask questions. Don't stop. Don't stop the hunger to do better things.
I absolutely love that. I know when I moved to Dubai, I found this incredible community that I joined, and the people just seemed like they were light years ahead of me in terms of the knowledge. And I was so scared to open my mouth to ask questions for fear that I would sound silly, or, you just kind of like nod ahead in conversations. And I finally just got over that fear and started asking questions. And the amount of support and just, you know, the time that people would take to just explain small things to me, that you'd eventually have all these puzzle pieces that fit together to keep moving forward. And I think that's exactly what you guys have done today. So thank you so much. We're building, we're growing all together. And once again, thank you so much. This event's in collaboration with the Mohammed bin Rashid Maktoum Knowledge Foundation. We've kicked off the Youth Forum 2022 virtual sessions. Guys, stay tuned. We've got 3 more happening today and 4 more tomorrow. But from us and the beautiful speakers, make sure to follow them on social media. Make sure to follow the event as well. And much love. Stay learning and do your own research.